On Tuesday, November 19th, 2019, at 4:15, the Human Development Department and our co-sponsors had a program titled Deep South, Deep North, an Intergenerational Geographic Journey of Race and Gender with Miss Lottie Scott. In a highly interactive format, Miss Lottie Scott discussed her upbringing in the Deep South and her transition to New England, aka the Deep North. Miss Lottie Scott is the author of a recent book titled Deep South, Deep North, A Family's Journey. Drawing on her grassroots experience as a founding member of the Norwich NAACP, as a former regional manager for the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights, as a past board chair of Bacchus Hospital, and as a board member of the Donald Oates Theater, Miss Lottie Scott offered her reflections on what it means for children and families to survive and thrive in the Deep South and Deep North of yesteryear and today. Miss Lottie Scott is a longtime civil rights activist and local arts advocate who earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Connecticut. She is a founding member of the Norwich NAACP, which began over 55 years ago. She is a former regional manager for the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights, a past board chair of Bacchus Hospital, and a board member of the Donald Oates Theater, as I said earlier. She also is the organizer and inspiration behind the Donald Oates Theater's Miss Lottie's Cafe, which features beautifully entertaining historical musical tributes that educate the community and youth about African American musical history and contributions to the world. She is the author of the recent book, as I said earlier, Deep South, Deep North, A Family's Journey, which traces Miss Lottie's family history and recounts the tribulations she experienced growing up during a time of racial discrimination and segregation in South Carolina. In her book, she draws on her grassroots experiences and offers her reflections on what it means for children and families to survive and thrive in the Deep South and the Deep North of yesteryear and today. Ms. Christine Hammond, who served as her co-host for the event that we held, is an emeritus professor of Three Rivers College, Department of English. She holds a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Michigan and a master's of literature and creative writing from Michigan State University. During her 14-year tenure at Three Rivers, she served as chair of the Humanities Department from 2005 until 2008 and chair of the English Department from 2008 until 2013. She received awards of merit in 2007 and 2014 for superior performance and exceptional service to the college. Some of her other accomplishments include serving as co-chair for the NEASC Standard 11 Ethics Committee and co-principal investigator for a National Science Foundation grant. Previously, she taught at Howard University, the University of the District of Columbia, Prince George's Community College, and served as an editor for the American Federation of Teachers. Her lifelong partner is the former vice president of Connecticut College, someone we love a lot, Ulysses B. Hammond. She also is a proud mother of 2 grown children and 6 grandchildren. The co-sponsors for our program were the Human Development Department at Connecticut College, the Anthropology Department, Education Department, Gender, Sexuality, and Intersectional Studies Department, History Department, Psychology Department, Religious Studies Department, the Armington Fund, the Co-Sponsorship Fund, the CCSRE Center Fund, the Halloran Center, Race and Ethnicity Programs, Religious and Spiritual Programs, Women of Color Collective, also known as WOCC, WOCC, and the Connecticut College Child Development Lab School. We sent posters, flyers, and a total of 65 books to our co-sponsoring departments and offices. When we were trying to raise funds, we explained to our co-sponsors that we were organizing this program on understanding U.S. Southern and Northern race and gender relations and their impact on children and families across generations. We explained that we would like to have Miss Lottie Scott come and engage with us in a highly interactive format where she would discuss her upbringing in the Deep South and her transition to New England, which she calls the Deep North. She is author of the recent book, as we've mentioned, so we were sure to talk about this when we were trying to seek co-sponsors. We talked about her new book, Deep South, Deep North, and we talked about her background, her grassroots experiences, and her different experiences on different boards and being a part of the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and so forth. Also, when we were fundraising, we talked about how this activity supports the mission of the college and that it is collaborative in the way that it's being done, where we are offering models of academic excellence to our students. We're collaborating with many different departments and offices, and that we have students working closely with us as a member of the planning committee. This particular topic and our esteemed guest, Miss Lottie Scott, her experiences will help to expand our understanding of diversity, equity, and democracy, all of these which are a part of our Connecticut College mission. Her topic also concerns the education and development of the whole person, in this case, including intergenerationally. And the whole person, this is another value that we have at Connecticut College. She also offers a challenge through her investigation of the Southern and Northern values of the ethical and the moral with global citizenship. And lastly, her work helps us to think about the environmental stewardship of this country in terms of its engagement of and with the most vulnerable in our population. That would be underrepresented children, youth, and families. So these are some of the things that we mentioned as our department tried to get co-sponsorship. We tried to clearly show how having Ms. Scott come with us, how that would help support the mission of the college, how it lines up with the mission of the college. We talked about how a program with her could help give us a better understanding of how racism has and continues to impact children and families historically and currently, whether those families have been reared in the U.S. North or the U.S. South. We talked about how it will give our students, faculty, and staff more to consider in terms of how Northern tolerance and racism may be both different and similar to similar to Southern tolerance and racism, both today and historically, and how these two kinds of racism have and are impacting children and families across the generations. Our program also will model for our students how a good deal of historical information is passed on from one generation to another within collectivist cultures such as African American and indigenous cultures. We said that our goals of the program were to provide an interactive program of interdisciplinary interest among our Connecticut College students, faculty, and staff on the topic of how racism has and continues to impact children and families historically and currently, whether those families have been reared in the U.S. North or U.S. South. For our Connecticut College students, faculty, and staff, we want to give more consideration on how Northern tolerance and racism may be both different and similar to Southern tolerance and racism, both today and historically. We also want our students to personally observe and understand the historical, personal, and intergenerational kinds of learning that take place from revered elders in the community as we listen to their personal narratives and storytelling. We also wanted a subset of the student and faculty audience to read the book itself, The Deep South, Deep North, in advance of the event and to meet with the author to discuss her book in an intimate pre-program setting. We were hoping to do that, but we weren't able to quite get that part in, but the students did, 65 students and faculty and staff did read her book in advance of attending the program. We also wanted our college community to hear from a local underrepresented elder voice such as Miss Lottie Scott, a grassroots black woman in the community whose cultures helped to build this nation, but whose voices many have not learned to honor for their intelligence, creativity, perseverance, survival, but yet they continue to impact our communities. These are elder women with the fierce spirit of Harriet Tubman within them, and we need to hear more from them. So these were the kinds of missions and goals that we have, that we expressed to our potential co-sponsors. And thank goodness our co-sponsors listened and they were eager and willing to support us. We had a number of questions that we began to compile for Miss Lottie Scott for when she arrived. We gave those questions in advance to the co-host, Miss Christine Hammond. The more we read her book, the more the students and faculty and staff began to compile different questions of interest that we had, that we were hoping that our co-host could help us to investigate with our guest speaker. So that was very exciting to see how her book was generating so many wonderful and interesting questions about Miss Lottie's upbringing, about her culture, about her survival as she went to the North, differences in racism in the North compared to the South, things like that. When developing our agenda for the program for her visit that day, we wanted her program to start at 4:15 in the afternoon, when many of the students would be available right after classes. So we put a lot of thought, though, into what we wanted the space to look like, what we wanted it to feel like, how we wanted to set the tone for the event. So, for example, we wanted to have a poster of her book. We wanted to have plants to surround her and the co-host. We wanted to do it as like a television studio talk show type format rather than like a straight lecture. So we tried to organize the space in a way that would remind us of a talk show. And so we had colorful lighting, dimmed lighting. We had 2 love seats. We had plants. We had tea. We had teacups. And all of these things our events office helped us with. And also our department executive assistant, Miss Graham, and myself and my colleagues, my departmental colleagues, we gathered up all of the props and things that we would need. So, and also with the help of the events office who supplied the plants and the easel. Our department ordered the poster. We gathered up teacups, teapot, teas, a cup for libations. That was going to be a part of our program. And we interjected a lot of little things into the program because we wanted Miss Lottie Scott to feel at home. We wanted her to feel comfortable and at home. So we integrated a lot of cultural aspects into our program. We opened up with a prayer from the Interim Director of Religious and Spiritual Programs. Also, we had a welcome from myself and our department chair, Sunil Bhatia. We talked about the significance of this program and of calling Miss Lottie Scott Miss, why we call her Miss, and how that's actually a cultural tradition. We had the pouring of libations, as I said earlier, which was done by our professor Rochelle Litchmore. We also had an introduction of our not only our guest but also our host Christina Hammond, and our professor Lauren Maroulis. She handled that introduction. We also had a dance. Student Dariana Greer performed a beautiful African dance with one of her colleagues, and they just did an absolutely beautiful job, and it helped set the tone for the program itself, which is what we wanted. We had plenty of time for questions and answers, and then we gave an honorary plaque to each of our two distinguished guests. Then we had closing acknowledgments from our department chair, and we actually had all of our professors and staff, all of our co-sponsors who were present. We had them gather so that we could offer our thanks. Then we took pictures afterwards, and then we tried to hustle Miss Lottie Scott over to the reception as quickly as we could, but everybody was pretty excited about the reception. So one of my dear friends, Denise, she fixed Miss Lottie Scott a wonderful plate with a little bit of everything on it to be sure that Miss Lottie Scott was able to get good sampling of what our reception offered, because she was flocked by students immediately after the program. So it took us some time to get her shuttled over to the reception next door. Okay. We had Professor Chantel Sharp. She invited everyone over to the reception right at the end of our program. And then we had one of our students, Emma, she had prepared music for our reception. Okay, on the plaques that we gave to Miss Lottie Scott, it said, Miss Lottie Scott, the Connecticut College Women of Color Collective and Human Development Department, and all of our co-sponsors honor Miss Lottie Scott for her book-based educational program, Deep South, Deep North, an intergenerational geographic journey of race and gender. November 19th, 2019, with appreciation for your legacy of hard work, dedication, and perseverance. On Miss Christina Hammond's plaque, we said the Connecticut College Women of Color Collective and Human Development Department and all our co-sponsors honor Miss Christina Hammond for her facilitation of the educational program, Deep South, Deep North, an intergenerational geographic journey of race and gender with Miss Lottie Scott, November 19th, 2019, with appreciation for your hard work, skill, and dedication. Okay, many have asked how the concept for this program was developed, so I'll tell you a little more about that. The components of the program actually were visions that God gave me, and I like to give God the credit for when He inspires me with ideas. The idea He gave me was to follow a talk show format rather than a traditional lecture. Anyway, when I pitched the idea to my department, when we were trying to make decisions about what our annual event would be for this academic year, they got very excited right away, and they were all in immediately. I can honestly say that I've never seen a talk done the way that we did it before, not as a college event, or at least not as I can recall. I've only seen the talk shows do this kind of thing, but applying it in a college setting, I think, again, it was an inspiration from God, and I'm very grateful for it because it worked very well. The dance and all of that, the dances that were incorporated into the program also were a vision that God developed in me. I wanted to construct the program in a way that would feel like home to Miss Scott. With Miss Scott having grown up in the black church, I knew that she may be accustomed to a singer or dancer performing before a special guest speaks. So we were aiming for either a singer or a dancer to help set the tone for Miss Scott before she spoke. About the African libations and the elder permission, because we did, Professor Litchmore, she was kind enough to pour libations in order to welcome in our ancestors. And then we did ask the most elder person in the audience, who was Miss Norma Parrish. We asked her if she would give us permission to start. And this is from African tradition. I felt that these two components would either be familiar to Miss Scott or would connect her and all of us to the ancestors during our event. I've seen it done many times at Kwanzaa events and so forth. Then the Young Women of Color Collective giving both speakers plaques. Again, God gave me that idea so that the younger generation of women of color at the college could honor both of our guest speakers in a special way. So bringing things full circle from the youngest women of color to the elder women of color who we were honoring that day as our guest speakers. About the reception, just as I said, I wanted to make sure that we honored our two guests as dignitaries. I wanted them to be treated just as we would dignitaries. And so I was so happy when we had raised enough funds that we could also honor them with the reception. When constructing the menu, our department executive assistant, Ms. Graham, she assisted me with that. We sat down and we thought very carefully about it. And we tried to order a little bit of just about everything. It seemed to have worked very well because nothing was wasted. We tried to, instead of ordering big amounts of a few things, we tried to order small to moderate amounts of a greater number of things. That way people could have a lot of choices, a lot of things to pick from. And we tried to make sure that we had vegan options as well. So we had a lot of diversity in terms of the food. I feel really blessed to have such supportive department mates. Each of us, like I said, we take a turn every year heading up an event, and we all try to jump in and support one another with our events. And any event that I've ever organized, they've always been there with me on board, and all hands have been on deck. And we've all worked very hard on our collaborative events, but I just feel so honored to have colleagues that really understand my visions, which sometimes feel kind of different. So, like I said, trying to pull off a talk show instead of a lecture in a college setting, things like that, trying to incorporate the libations and the dance and the getting permission of the elders and the reception and the music, so many different components, and my colleagues get it, they understand and they just kind of roll with it, and I really, really appreciate that, the way that they're so willing to help, and they get it, that just makes me so happy. They don't treat me like my ideas are strange, but rather they try to listen and try to feel what I'm feeling. And that is a great gift for someone to have in colleagues. So in leaving, I would like to say that I hope that Miss Lottie Scott's book, or I should say as I end this video, I hope that Miss Lottie Scott's book and her guest speaking, I hope that it might be of interest to other colleges, community colleges, high schools, and even middle schools. For colleges, her work may be of interest to education, human development departments, history, anthropology, and many fields as indicated by the long list of departments who co-sponsored this program. We had departments from everywhere, as I mentioned earlier in this video. I would like to note that we're really blessed that our co-host, Miss Christine Hammond, she would not accept any honorarium from us for this event. So that further enabled the budget and allowed her generosity was a big boon to our program because it allowed us to stretch our dollars further and incorporate so many different things into our program. Most importantly, this was a book and program about which my students are still talking. Not just my students, but the students all across the college are still talking about this program. The students at Connecticut College were deeply touched by all that Miss Scott shared about gender inequality and racism throughout her life, as well as the courageous steps that she has taken all of her days to resist and change inequalities. Thank you, Miss Lottie Scott.